Hello. Yeah, this is in connection to my previous recording about ADD, and well, I have been going through YouTube, and always I found that people kept talking about basically ADHD, the hyperactive version of ADD, and then the fact that uh, you don't need medication, and then that they get pulled out because they're hyperactive, and thus they are as normal as any other, and so they do not need treatments or medications or whatever. And I always tend to disagree with it. Not that I agree with medication as such, but then the fact that you know I do need some kind of support, because for me I have a big problem with attention, and also the fact that I find it hard to do any intensive work, whether it is to read or to watch an intensive movie or anything that needs a lot of concentration, a lot of work. I find it really hard to do, or rather sustain it, unless there is some kind of stimulation or something that attracts me for the moment, but on the long term I fail to concentrate on anything, and that really becomes quite tough for me. And while going on the net, I found something about sluggish cognitive tempo, like this article I'm reading from Wikipedia, and basically, yeah, it's more like it's the opposite of ADHD, and it seemed to explain a lot of the problems I seem to be having. As they say, that those with SCT are passive, daydreamy, shy, and hypoactive in both the mental and physical way, compared to ADHD people. And people with SCT have a more under aroused state of mind, which I find is very true in my case, in which I think would be the difference between those having ADHD and those having SCT, which would be more in terms of ADD, because it's more inattention, but as well it's more like you're not just distracted. It's not just about being distracted or that my mind wanders, but the fact that it's just too exhausted to go through anything that's really hard. Not just because it's wandering, but just because it's exhausted. And I found this true in many cases. Like, suppose I have to do any intensive work, I can't really do it, because after a while I get really exhausted. I tend to feel tired, I tend to feel sluggish, and I really cannot get myself through anything that needs a lot of attention, and I really found that to be a major problem. So this tends to explain a lot. And also the problem with SCT is they use a different kind of medication, or at least it can't work with the same kind of medication as ADHD. So one way I do agree, in the sense that you don't have to necessarily pick every kid that's hyperactive and put them under medication. And I find that the thing with this is it's just some kind of way of, more like, if anyone has seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, it's the same thing. Like, it's more like, if you cannot conform to society, then society will find some way of making you adjust and be a part of it. And that would hold true for hyperactive kids, because they tend to be more distracted and more active and more running around, which is not how society would look at an ideal child or an ideal person. And hence they try to find ways to reform a character, which in other cases doesn't need reformation, doesn't need change. But in the case of kids who have SCT, you're shy, you're introverted, you're sitting there, you're most likely to be dazed with a lot of inattention. And the thing is, because you're sitting there quietly and you don't cause a lot of disturbance, people first of all won't notice you, and even if they notice you, they won't really think anything's wrong with you, because you tend to blend in. Unlike kids who have ADHD, who tend to stand out because of their constantly aroused state of mind, whereas those with an under aroused or unaroused state of mind tend to be like, people just look beyond them, they hardly notice them. So it's not surprising that something like sluggish cognitive tempo, or rather kids who have inattention as their main ADD component, are really late to be diagnosed as compared to those who have ADHD. Like, there's been a lot of attention regarding ADHD and hyperactivity and impulsivity, because you can catch that out, and that would be considered not very social habits, and hence it would be early detectable. Whereas kids who are more prone to ADD, they don't tend to stand out socially, they seem more withdrawn, and as a sense, because I guess they don't seem to pose any kind of threat to the immediate social fabric, people don't really concern themselves with such cases, and I think it's a really sad thing, and moreover people will never realize what it means. I mean, in my case it's like I get exhausted, it's like getting mentally exhausted. Like, it's like how for an athlete to run, if you don't have the stamina physically, you cannot run, you get exhausted. For me as well, I cannot do a lot of things. I can't read intensive things because it exhausts me. I'm doing my MA now, and I have to read things like Foucault and Derrida, and it's really tough. It's really exhausting. uh, I have a classmate who has dyslexia, but I'm assuming the thing with him is he has problems reading, but he at least can sit for long hours in front of a book. I don't know, he says it's difficult, but somehow he tends to manage it. But somehow it's hard with me. It's like I can't stand 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour. If I go through that, and I can't, my stomach starts paining, and I can't focus too long on anything. It becomes too painful, and after a while, if I do something that takes a lot of concentration, I tend to be too dazed and too sapped out of energy that I really can't respond to anything. That happens to me a lot, and I don't know how to explain this to people. It's hard. How do you tell people that you get mentally exhausted? It doesn't make sense. So it's tough getting this across to people, especially, with the whole thing about ADHD, people saying that they're normal. I mean, yeah, but what about this? I don't know. I haven't been medicated or anything, and I don't know if medication's good either. I'm going to meet the psychiatrist pretty soon, so I don't know what it's going to be like. I'm hoping it will be effective, but who knows? But the point is, I don't know what else to do, because I can't just live. I tried meditation, it doesn't seem to be working, and I don't know more or less what am I supposed to do. It's pretty weird. I seriously have no clue how to manage this. So yeah, basically that's what I founded SCT, which has broadened my understanding about the whole thing, and hopefully makes me view things in a better light. For example, when choosing a career, I used to think that, okay, I'm exhausted, so probably it's not a good career choice because I get exhausted doing it. But I didn't realize that I get exhausted doing any mental activity which takes a lot of strain. And if I do go through it, it's like I get really stressed out, and I really get squeezed out of all my juices, which is painful. So it's like in any day I can do 2 to 3 hours of productive work maximum. That would be a record. In many days I hardly work. It's hard. I don't know. Anyway, that's it.